everyone, welcome back. Another day, another video. This is IELTS How To, your favorite channel teaching you tips, tricks, and strategies to pass your IELTS exam in the minimum amount of time possible and with the minimum amount of headache and frustration. So today I want to continue one of the previous videos we did, and you can see it over here on the screen, which was related to how to plan and write your essay. So today we're going to continue on that topic, and we're going to talk about the other task in your writing, which is how to plan your letter. Specifically, if you are taking the IELTS general training, as you know, part 1 or task 1 is writing a letter, and task 2 is writing the essay. So the reason I wanted to make this video is because a lot of you guys send us messages or leave comments, and it's understandable that your frustration is with the essay. This essay, problem and solution essay, discussion essay, how do I do the essay? But you oftentimes forget that essay is not the only part in the writing that gives you marks towards writing. And I'll give you a quick story. I had one of my students recently who took the exam, but despite us pushing and encouraging you, those of you that take our course, to actually submit your letter and your essay for review from one of our IELTS examiner, she did not do that. So this lady in particular just watched all the videos and she decided, I'm ready to go for the exam. And unfortunately, and I want to share this with you because it's not something I hide, she got 6.5 in writing, even though everything else was 7.5 or 8 or even 8.5. So when I had a chat with her, I said, what happened? And she said, oh, I didn't feel comfortable and I thought I was okay to go for the exam. So long story short, she didn't prepare it. Now, when she finally submitted her letter and writing for feedback, for assessment to us, we realized that her essay itself was good, but the letter was a total disaster because she completely neglected on actually practicing it and writing it and submitting it for feedback. So feedback is absolutely crucial. Now, let's get back into the topic, why you should plan your letter and how to actually plan your letter. So I want you to imagine this. Imagine you're driving a car, or imagine you're driving a motorcycle, or imagine if you're even navigating a boat, right? And imagine that you don't know the direction where you're going. You're just driving down the road, but you're trying to figure it out as you go. Or you're navigating a big boat in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean or the Indian Ocean, and you're not quite sure where you go. And initially you're going towards the right direction, but you just steer to the side by 1 degree. Right? So it seems like it's not a big deal. Instead of going straight forward, you're going a little bit to the left. Now, if you do this only for a few meters or a few kilometers, it's not that big of a deal. But imagine if you do this over the span of 10,000 kilometers. You're going to end up in a completely different direction from where you're actually supposed to in the first place, right? So it's the same idea with your letter. Planning the letter, planning the essay is absolutely crucial. And if you start out with a poor plan for your letter, you're obviously going to end up in the wrong destination, which is not your desired score, but missing by half a band, like unfortunately one of my students. So it's really important you set out the guidelines, you set out the structure within which you're going to give your answer. So let's look at a few ways to do that. So when you start to actually plan your letter, there are a few things that you can do right off the bat that will help you actually write the letter correctly. So for example, one of the things is, depending on the question, is you will decide which style to write the letter in, which is fairly easy to do. Is it a formal letter? Is it a semi-formal letter? Or is it a casual letter? So if you pick the wrong style from the beginning, and the letter is supposed to be casual, but you write it in a formal way with formal vocabulary, your whole letter is pretty much gone. You're going to do the whole task incorrectly. Same thing, oftentimes students understand the question and they answer the main question, but as you know, the letter oftentimes has sub-questions. So if you didn't cover those properly, of course, it's going to affect your task achievement score, for example. So as you know, it's recommended by many tutors and even some of the IELTS guidelines that you get before your exam that you should spend 20 minutes to write your letter. So in writing, you get 1 hour in total. You're going to spend 20 minutes on your letter and 40 minutes on your essay. Now, let's break those 20 minutes down in a few different chunks. The way I recommend for you to do it, and for all of our students, is to spend 5 minutes on planning, 10 minutes on actually writing, and the last 5 minutes on fixing and improving. Fixing and improving. And I'll always emphasize this with students that, look, knowing what to do is one thing, doing it is another thing, but oftentimes when we actually set the time aside to proofread and check our work and actually enhance it, this is what makes the difference between getting 7.5 and 8, 6.5 and 7. It's not necessarily your ability to give amazing ideas and really fancy vocabulary, but it's simply reducing the number of mistakes that you make. And shortly, you're going to see an actual example of a letter question and how we would go about planning it. But before we do that, I want to highlight a few points of how you're getting marked for your letter and what are some of the things that you can do when you plan in your first 5 minutes. So the first category in which you're getting marked is task achievement. Now, what is task achievement? Obviously that you understood and answered the question correctly. You're using the right style, the right tone when you talk. So for example, if I talk to my good friend John, who's here taking the videos for us, the way I talk to John is totally different if I'm talking to, let's say, a university dean or university professor, meaning the tone of the conversation between me and John is more casual, whereas if I'm writing a letter to the dean of the university, I'm going to speak in a formal way. And the second thing for task achievement is obviously writing the right number of words. So it's recommended that you write more than 150 words, and again, that's not that hard to do. The second category is coherence and cohesion. So this is basically whether you organize your ideas and your letter in a logical way. So there are a few different components for that, but one of them is paragraphing, meaning whether you use paragraphing logically, right? Are you giving one main idea for a paragraph, or are you writing your whole letter in one big chunk of text with everything mixed together? The second thing is using your connecting devices and your connecting words. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, in addition, moreover, in fact. The third category has to do with your lexical resources. So what does that mean? That's a fancy way of saying just the kind of words that you use. So again, back to what I was saying earlier. If I'm talking to John, I will be speaking in a very casual way. I'll say, hi, John. Hey, John. If I'm talking to the dean of a university or a hiring manager or a boss, I would say, dear Mr. Hiring Manager, dear Mr. Dean, for example, right? The second thing is, again, reducing the number of mistakes that you're making. So one of the things that IELTS examiners always check is if you're using the words precisely with the correct meaning. Oftentimes, students will just get a bunch of vocabulary online and they will try to add it into their writing, but they're not using it correctly, meaning the word's meaning is actually different from what they're intending to do with it. So you need to make sure that it's better to use simple words precisely than to use big fancy words, but in an inaccurate way. And the last thing is whether you are using collocations. So again, collocations, you can see in one of our previous videos, are words that always go together. And as I recommended to you in the last 5 minutes, whenever you are checking your work, fixing your mistakes, and improving it, the improving part is basically where you should sit down and say, is there another way I can say this, right? Is there another way that I can replace these simple words with a collocation, just to boost my score a little bit? And again, you can find on our blog a list of collocations that are frequently repeated in the exam, that you can frequently use for topics that are coming in the exam. So I'll put a link below in the video so you can find it there. And the last category in which you're getting scored is the grammatical range and accuracy. Did you use different tenses? Past, present, future, and so on. Did you use a lot of different grammatical devices? Simple sentences, complex sentences, and so on. And finally, did you use your grammar in a correct way, or are you having grammatical mistakes and punctuation mistakes? So that's something we'll save till the end in the last 5 minutes when you're actually fixing your letter. So let's look at an actual example of a letter question that you might get in your exam and how we can go about planning it. So let's take a look at an actual example of a letter question for your task 1 in the IELTS general writing portion of your test. One of your friends lives in another country. You want to spend some time working in that country. Write a letter to your friend. In your letter, you should Describe why you want to work in that country. Tell him or her about your skills and experience. Ask some questions related to work. For example, the wage or the salary. So the first thing we want to do, we want to identify the style of this letter, right? And that's something we talk about in detail in our course with lots of examples, but I think this one is obvious. You're writing to your friend. How would you talk to your friend? I would not say, hey, dear John, or dear Mr. John, or dear John Smith. I say, hey, John, hi, John, right? Obviously, he's my friend. We would speak in a casual way. And the first thing I'd recommend is writing the introduction, the greeting, hey, John. And the last thing is, which is signing off. For example, talk to you later or see you soon. So that's something that's very easy to do. You're writing like no more than 10 words. You got your greeting, right? And you got your signing off. Now, keeping in mind and bringing together all of those things that we actually have to incorporate to get a high score for the 4 marking criteria, right away, I want to start thinking, how can I organize my letter in a logical and coherent way? So it's very important that you're not just asking the main question, but you have a look at the sub-questions. And almost always in your exam, you will have at least 2 or 3 sub-questions. So the best way to do it is to start a new paragraph for each one of those. Why? Because you want to keep separate ideas in separate paragraphs. So let's have a look at the actual sample, or as we call it, the skeleton of your letter. The outline, the structure that we're going to follow, and that's something that takes literally a few minutes to do. So have a look at the screen. As you can see, the first thing we have at the top is obviously the greeting, hey John, and the last thing that we have at the very bottom is the signing off part. So because it's my friend and I would speak to him in a very casual manner, and obviously my intention is to work and live in the same country as him. So I would say something like, see you soon, comma, Alex, right? And again, that's a very informal, very casual way. And I'm staying on topic, I'm using the right tone, because obviously my intention is to live and work in that country. Now, what you will notice is we have 4 different points or 4 different lines in which we want to outline. And in the very first line, we want to say the purpose of the letter. Again, we want to say the purpose of the letter. That's very, very important. You need to keep your main purpose at the very top. So if we refer back to the main question, the purpose is we want to work in that country. So I would write, want to work in your country. And we can even go one step further and we can add the name of the country. So for example, we can say Portugal. Right? It just helps us give a better direction for the essay. On the second line in our skeleton, in our letter structure, you can see that I'm answering one of the sub-questions, meaning why do I want to go work in that country? So I listed a few ideas. For example, explore local culture and learn new things. But I want to start thinking ahead. Next line of our skeleton of the structure of our letter, you can see I literally wrote skills and experience because I want to answer all the sub-questions to make sure I'm getting the maximum marks in my task achievement. And as you can see again on your screen, some of the ideas we wrote are completed 6 months internship in the same role or similar experience. But again, we want to start thinking ahead, right? I don't want to just use simple words and say similar experience. Of course, it's relevant, but I want to think, what's a collocation that I know that I can work into the conversation, work into the letter? So when I'm actually writing that paragraph, instead of just saying I had similar experience, I want to say that I honed skills. So honed skills is a collocation, right? It's like you sharpen your skills. You get really, really good at something. So when I'm writing, I'm going to find a way to make that into a sentence, right? So I could say not only I had similar experience in my previous role, but I was also able to hone some crucial skills that I can apply in this new position. So something that very simple to do, but again, you always need to think ahead. How can I make this letter better? How can I get over band 7 or over band 8? On the next line, again, you can see questions, right? So one of the things that we are required to do is answer any questions we have related to that position. So for example, I wrote salary, vacation policy, and sick leave. So when I'm finishing up my letter, I will be asking those questions about salary, vacation policy, sick leave, and maybe we will find another way to add some more collocations in the letter itself. So this is all you have to do. So let's bring it full circle and let's summarize everything in one section. For your letter, you will have in total 20 minutes out of the 1 hour that you have for the writing section. Now, out of those 20 minutes, we want to be very strategic. You're going to spend 5 minutes on planning. You're going to spend 10 minutes on writing and actually expanding on your ideas in full sentences. And you're going to spend the last 5 minutes to check your work, fix it, and improve it. Check, fix, and improve. And if you have a look again at the question that we use as an example, right, related to asking your friend some questions about working in his country. In 5 minutes, we come up with a pretty solid structure. So the first thing we do, we write the greeting at the top and the signing off at the bottom. And of course, we have to do it in the right style, in the right tone. Formal, semi-formal, or casual, right? Depending on who you're talking to. The second thing we do, we want to answer the very main question at the top, and then we want to have separate paragraphs for all of the sub-questions. And we usually list a few ideas for each point. So as you can see again in the example that we did earlier, when they ask you what's the reason we want to work there, you can say explore the local culture, but learn new things as well. So you can either pick the best idea, the strongest idea, or you can mention both together. The last thing we want to do, we want to obviously give the right information, but don't just stop there. You need to think, what are some collocations that I know that are related to this topic that I can work into the conversation? And one of the examples we gave is not only, for example, that you have similar experience, but you hone certain skills. To hone skills is a collocation. And you don't need a lot of them. If you got 1 or 2, it's sufficient, right? And as we said, when you have 10 minutes to actually write your letter start to finish, whatever are those bullet points that we wrote down, you're just going to write it in full sentences. They don't need to be fancy, they can be simple sentences, and that's why we set aside the last 5 minutes to enhance our grammar, change active voice to passive voice, change past tense to future tense, and do all of those different things that are going to help you improve your grammar score and your vocabulary score. So if you found this video helpful, you can find some more resources below in the video description. And I highly recommend you watch the previous video that we did about planning your essay. I'll see you next time. This is Alex from IELTS How To. Best of luck in your test. Wait. Before you go, it would mean the world to me and to our team if you subscribe to our channel right now, if you click like, and if you left a comment with a feedback, anything you loved about this video or anything you'd want to see more of. I personally read all the comments. I personally reply to as many as I can. If you want to access any more free resources and bonuses and see some of our other courses, just head to www.ieltshowto.com or you can find the links below.